everybody, and have you ever had that moment where you're watching a show, and it be that either on Crunchyroll or Netflix, it doesn't matter, just either way, you're watching a show, and you start getting really into it, and you're like so hyped, and you're so excited, and a big scene comes up, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be great, and then you have a moment where you realize that a lot of time has passed, and you check where you are in the episode, and you know they're gonna leave it on a cliffhanger, because that's what Wit just did. Oh boy, so we are here today to talk about Vinland Saga episode 17, Servant, and before we do, I want to give a big shout out to my boy at BGPhoenix over on Twitter for sharing last week's video, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Vinland Saga video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Now then, like I was saying, Vinland Saga decided, hey, you know what would be a great time to end the episode? Before the coolest friggin' fight. Why would you do that? You can't see it, but I'm burying my face in my hands like, why? Why would you do that? Why would you do it? Wit, are you trying to make me, are you trying to make me sad? Because, the whole episode, I was like, if we lose any of these characters, I'm going to scream. And then so I went from, immense anxiety to immense hype, knowing what was coming. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get Thorfinn versus Thorkeld, round 2. This is gonna be so hype. And then you end it there. You end it right there. And, oh, I was seething. But at the same time, I wasn't too mad, because the whole episode was, yeah, this is dope. This was a good episode. Okay, try to rein it in. This episode really brings us back to the action that a lot of the series was sort of known for, that this was, remember episode 1 when this hit, and, the action was insane, and you were, shocked by how much, Thor's was just kicking tail left, right, jumping across boats and stuff like that, that first action scene? This episode felt sort of reminiscent to that. The animation team was like, okay, so this is going to be a pretty big moment. This is where Askeladd turns heel, or actually, I guess you could say in a weird way, he turns face. I mean, again, Vinland Saga doesn't really have heroes or villains, so it's kind of hard to say, but basically turns on his former crew, and all-out chaos ensues. And it is quite possibly one of the dopest scenes the show has gotten to adapt thus far. Now again, I don't read the manga, so I'm sure that there is much cooler stuff down the pipeline. I don't know that, but from what I can tell you, the betrayal in the whole Askeladd versus his crew was pretty friggin' great. And like I said, I was nervous the entire time that we were gonna lose somebody. I am a little bit concerned that we haven't, that all the characters we know are okay, except for the priest, except my main man, Priest, whose name I don't recall. I'm a little concerned that he didn't actually stand up with the others. I don't imagine they'd kill him off screen like that, or not off screen, but the way that I don't imagine them killing him by them getting into a crash. I don't think that's how they would axe him off. But then again, with everything with Vinland Saga, I really can't predict most of the show, so I truly don't know. What I do know is that may have been Askeladd's finest hour. Askeladd, he opens the show, but maybe not in the way that you would think. He opens this episode, and it's a young Askeladd, which did take me a second. I wasn't super sure what was going on at first. But yeah, it's a young Askeladd with what I can assume is his mother, and they're talking about Avalon, and I was like, I know that name. I was like, Avalon, and then I realized who it was and who they were talking about, and I'm like, oh, okay, yes, that makes sense, Artorias. And it was actually, it was a charming scene, right? Because it was sad in the sense that these two are clearly like in a bad way, but the fact that this mom is trying to comfort her son with the story of a king who would return to them one day, and this pious, righteous king who was simply in the kingdom of Avalon, who was in the kingdom of heaven and would return one day to save them. And I find it interesting that Askeladd's mom tells him to serve the king when he returns. When Artorias returns, you have to serve him. You have to be his staff and his sword. And that got me to thinking, right? Because I'm assuming Askeladd isn't exactly the kind of dude who puts a lot of stock in faith. I don't imagine that he's genuinely like, I have to be here when Artorias returns. Like, he says, like, I need to be here when I just want to serve Artorias when he returns from Avalon. Like, but I think he was speaking in metaphor. I don't think that he actually believes that Artorias is real and Avalon is real and all that stuff. I think that he was just looking to serve somebody akin to Artorias. And to me, it kind of makes the whole Thor's versus Askeladd fight from way back 10 times sadder. Because now, episodes upon episodes later, like when did that happen? Episode 4, I think Thor's goes out. So that's what, like 12 episodes later? An entire run of a first season later, we finally find out what that whole scene meant when Askeladd had asked Thor's to lead them. That, knowing what we know now, like that sucks. that breaks my heart, because that means like Askeladd looked at Thor's and was like, yeah, I want to, like, he was, this whole time he's been looking for an Artorias, a man who would descend from Avalon or like return from Avalon to lead him, and he's been just searching for somebody like that, and he really thought that Thor's was the guy. Like, he really believed, like, yeah, it was Thor's for a second, but when Thor's declined him, he's like, okay, then it's not him. And it's just so sad. It's just so sad. Everything about Vinland Saga so far has been a series of, this is awesome, but it's also so sad, because that fight scene from episode 4 is great, but it's also so sad. And the fight scene here, again, is great. Askeladd versus, like, what was it, like 50 men, he said? That's fantastic. But it's also so sad, because it's the end of Askeladd's group. It's the end of Askeladd's, like, run as leader. And knowing what he was doing it all for, it's just friggin', say it with me, it was just sad. And the moment of betrayal, too, is I'm not gonna lie, it was dope. Seeing, like, Askeladd just cut through these dudes. If I may quote Barristan Selmy from Game of Thrones, even now, Askeladd could cut through those men like cake. It was just, it was dope. Like, he cleaved a man, a human being, wearing armor in half with his sword. And I don't mean like across the waist, I mean head to toe, cut a man in half. Askeladd is the real deal, y'all. Like, oh my. He really is starting to remind me a lot of Selmy from Game of Thrones, because he even keeps commenting about his age and everything, and I'm like, wow, he really is becoming Selmy. He's a darker version of Selmy, and it just makes me love Askeladd all the more. I friggin' love this character, and I love that even in the face of death, because like by any account, even with the amount of skill, trickery, and strength Askeladd has, I mean, he cut a man in half. Like, even with that, he's gonna lose. Like, it's way too many dudes. And he says, like, back in my prime, I would have easily chopped through you guys, but now that's not quite the case. And he was just basically waiting for Thorkel, right? He's like, if I could buy enough time, maybe Thorkel can tip the scales back in my favor and I can get out of this. Or at least that's what I was reading from it. And it kind of bugged me, right? Because like he not bugged me, but it like Torgrim, like trying to be cocky and trying to play leader. I'm like, I liked your brother more than I ever liked Torgrim. So when Torgrim like betrays Askeladd and is like aim for his legs, I'm like, why would you do that? Like, if you know that you're just gonna kill him anyway, because again, they say like finish him like later on. I'm like, okay, so if you were just gonna kill Askeladd anyway, why wouldn't you just have the archers shoot him? Like, why not just have the archers take him out? I don't understand that. See, that's why, Torgrim, that's why you was a bad leader, and that's why you're now, I assume, brain dead. We'll get into it, but it was weird. Actually, you know what? Let's just get into it now. Thorkel finally meets Askeladd in what is probably one of the most surreal yet perfectly normal scenes in the show, because these two characters are two of like a handful of larger than life characters. You know how in Lord of the Rings, actually there's a lot of references to a lot of references I could make to Lord of the Rings in regards to this episode, but the one that I want to hammer home in is Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, right? You know how you have like your regular foot soldiers in that movie, and then you have characters like Aragorn, you have characters like Gimli, like the big characters, right? Like Legolas, even Theoden, right? Like all these characters who are like, they're the larger than life characters, and they almost seem like worth like 10 men or like an army to themselves. That's the vibe I get from Vinland Saga, where you have certain characters who are like your average sort of like Viking era level strength, and then you have these almost like I said, larger than life, almost mythical like hero characters and villain characters, but not heroes and villains, but just like these like mythical characters whose strength seems again like just worth 10 of these dudes. Like Thorfinn on his own feels like he's worth like 10 men from ASKELADD'S group, and ASKELADD is like he's worth more than like 50 dudes, and Thorkel might as well be a one-man army on his own. Same goes for Thor's back in the day, and they give me that sort of like Fellowship of the Ring, like these characters are somehow worth 10 men, and that's not a bad thing, because it means that when you see these guys go up against like regular foot soldiers, it's fun because you're just watching them cut down people again like cake. But when you see two of these dudes go up against each other, all hell is about to break loose, because it means that you're gonna see a total spectacle. And the fact that they ended it on the note that we're gonna see a spectacle kills me, because I just wanted to see it there. But it's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. And it's not like it's just the ASKELADD stuff that like has me excited. They also just totally left Bjorn on this note of like, how are you gonna give me my husband eating the berserker mushroom and then just leave it? Like, how Wit, what are you doing? It just kills me. I'm like, why you gotta do me like that? And they're smart too, because they're like, hey man, you excited for next week? Like, yes, of course I'm excited. Like, of course I'm excited. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen next week. I will say that the OP, the more I think about it, the OP for this show totally spoiled this entire arc. Like, I have to assume, which actually makes me nervous now that I think about it. Oh no. Oh, okay. Anime only theory crafting time, so manga fans, you can laugh at me if I'm wrong, or you can be awkwardly uncomfortable if I'm right. But I think I'm right on this too. And no, I like, no joke, I didn't write this. I just thought of this. I could be way off base. But in the OP, when we see them walking through the snowstorm, right? And this is like, it's after the clips of them fighting in what is this arc, like seeing Bjorn smash through dudes like in his berserker mode, seeing Thorfinn fighting with Thorkel, seeing Askeladd fighting with his men. All of that we've seen already. We've also seen my boy Prince Cannet step up in a big way. He looks cool in the OP, so I'm actually kind of excited to see what happens with him. However, when the characters at the end are walking towards like the unknown, like they're walking through the snowstorm, it looks like Thorfinn either loses them in the storm or they like just fade away in the same way. And I don't know if this would be it though, because it looks like they sort of fade into the snowstorm the same way that we lost Ragnar. Like Ragnar sort of fades into the snowstorm in the OP, so I don't think they're gonna kill Askeladd and Cannet. I could be wrong, but the one that I'm concerned about is Bjorn, because I just connected that in that scene we only see Askeladd, Cannet, and Thorfinn. We don't see the priest and we don't see Bjorn. And if I lose the priest and Bjorn next week, I'm gonna be so upset. Especially Bjorn. Why do my husbandos always die? Whew, okay, so if you couldn't tell everybody, this week's episode is getting a very strong rank of A. This was friggin' fantastic. Happily putting this one into the A tier. On that note, everybody, that just about wraps everything up. But before we go, as always, I want to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omner Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdun. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and hey, if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get for as little as $1 a month, and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that's going to be a video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.